This presentation is part of the series on the Psalms, and in this session I'd like to look at Psalm 82. It begins, God takes a stand in the divine assembly. Now the divine assembly, according to the Israelites, was God Yahweh who sat upon the throne, and then all of the minor deities. This psalm was written during a time when Israel was henotheist, not monotheist. Monotheist means you believe in one God. Henotheist, you believe that all the other gods exist, you just choose to worship one God. So when they talk about the divine assembly, they're really talking about those minor deities, and God sits in judgment of them. He has called a meeting and he condemns them. Why? Because each of these minor deities, each of these judges, has been given authority over the nations. We hear that in Deuteronomy. When God divided the nations, he kept Israel for himself. But he gave Syria to Baal, he gave Babylon to Marduk, he gave Greece to Zeus, and their responsibility was to take care of the people. And they failed in that responsibility. All they were concerned with was their own profit. Very much like what Jesus says, that the good shepherd takes care of the sheep, but the bad shepherds, they abuse the sheep, only think of themselves. And because of that, God says that they will become mortal. Now, what is this psalm all about? This psalm represents that moment in Israel's history when Israel went from being henotheist to monotheist. That from now on, those other gods will not be said to be inferior to Yahweh. They'll be said to not exist. We certainly see that in the story of Elijah. When Elijah goes up Mount Carmel, he has a contest between himself and the priests of Baal. They sacrifice an animal. They try to call fire from the sky. We would call that lightning, to show who the true God of the storm, the God of rain was. Well, the priests of Baal dance and sing and cut themselves, but the account says nothing happened. There was no voice, nothing. Now, did you hear that? Nothing, nothing, nothing. In Hebrew, there's no comparative or superlative degree. So to say nothing 3 times means that Baal and those other gods are the nothingest. And then Elijah waters down his sacrifice and fire comes from the sky. What we have here is the revelation that there is only one God. Yahweh is the God of all nations. And this psalm represents that moment in which God, the Most High, sort of demotes those other gods. Now, how can we use this psalm in our world today? Can we use this psalm for those who have received authority, for judges, for presidents, for politicians? And can we remind them of their responsibility to take care of the widow and the orphan, to make sure that God's justice reigns upon the earth? And if they don't do that, can this almost be a threat to them, a reminder that they won't last forever, and someday they will be judged according to what they were called to do by God himself? And so psalms like this, although we can place them in this case, 850 BC, still has a meaning and application in the 21st century. Because although the characters involved have changed a bit, the idea of power and responsibility and God's will are still as true now as they were then.